My son exposed wife's affair. She betrayed him. I got custody and left her. I never thought my marriage would end like this. I, 39 male, used to believe my wife, Deborah, 37 female, was perfect. She was a kind woman, and after 13 years of marriage, she'd never given me a reason to doubt her. We had a 13-year-old son, Daniel, and I always considered her to be a good mother to him. We had a nice home and a lovely family together, and everything fell apart because of her. What I really dislike about all of this is how I had to find out about it. I wish I could have discovered it myself. Instead, my son was the one who found out about it and told me, and that ended up driving a huge wedge in his relationship with his mom. It's messed him up a lot, and I don't think I can forgive her for that. Deborah had been growing a bit distant over the past few weeks. She was quieter than normal and wasn't as open as she usually was. Being married and keeping a relationship close requires a lot of hard work. There can be low moments, and I thought this was just another one of them, and I figured that we could pull through it with communication and patience just like we always had before. I didn't realize that this time was different. I'd just gotten home from work and Daniel was in the living room doing something on his phone. I sat with him and we talked for a little while, but I could tell something was bothering him. I asked him what was on his mind, and he kept claiming that it was nothing. It was obvious that it wasn't true, so I kept pressing. He was quiet for a while, and I could tell he was debating whether he should tell me. When he made a decision, he just said, "Dad, I'm just telling you what I saw." As soon as he said that, I knew it was something serious. I asked him if he was in trouble, but he shook his head and said it was about me. Eventually, he opened up and said, "Dad, I think Mom is being unfaithful to you." I was so surprised by that I couldn't stop myself from chuckling. It wasn't remotely funny, but I didn't know how to react at the moment. I was caught completely off guard. Daniel wouldn't joke about something like that, and from the way he was talking, I could tell he fully believed what he was saying. I put my hand on his shoulder and asked him if he was sure. He nodded and explained that Deborah had asked him to help her set up an app on her phone. She was hopeless with technology, and she often needed one of us to help her with her phone or laptop. While he was doing what she asked, a notification popped up on the screen. He didn't tell me exactly what it said. It said it was romantic. At first, he thought it was from me, and he planned to ignore it, but he realized the name attached to the notification was someone else entirely. He stopped at that moment and asked if I could promise that he wouldn't get in trouble for what he was about to tell me. I assured him that he wasn't in any trouble at all. He hesitated for a moment, and it was clear that he was very scared. I could understand it was a lot for a young boy to deal with. He then told me that he'd gone into his mom's messages after that. He felt bad about it at the time, but he thought it was something he had to do. He wanted to make sure it wasn't all a misunderstanding before he came to tell me about it. He told me that he found a lot of messages between her and another man. There were so many that there was no way he could have gone through everything without raising his mom's suspicion. But he'd seen enough. Some of the most recent messages were him talking about what a nice time they had together and asking when she'd be able to slip away again. He said she commented on how difficult it was finding time for herself when she had a husband and a child, like she was talking about getting a manicure or something. He said he didn't know what the right thing to do was. He cared about both of us, and he wanted us to stay together, but he also didn't want to see his mom hurt me. I told him I understood that it was a difficult decision for him, and I thanked him for letting me know. I hugged him and told him that he didn't have to worry about it anymore. He wasn't in any kind of trouble whatsoever, and that I would take it from there. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our space for more real-life stories. What would you do in this situation? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. He seemed relieved to get it off of his chest. He was back to his normal self in a few hours, though I noticed that he couldn't meet his mom's eyes. I didn't feel completely comfortable around her either, but I didn't let it show. I was still processing everything Daniel told me. I knew he wouldn't lie to me, but I still needed to look into it and confirm it myself. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay beside Deborah, staring at the ceiling with my mind running wild. I wanted to shake her awake and demand the truth from her, but I knew that would get me nowhere. I'd have to see the proof with my own eyes. I went through her phone that same night, but I couldn't find anything. I didn't take that as proof of her innocence, though. It just meant she might be covering her tracks. Maybe she figured out Daniel had seen something. At the advice of another subreddit, I hired a private investigator. It was a lot of money, but it felt like the smartest option. I had a reason to suspect her, and it seemed like she was covering her tracks. I wouldn't be able to trust her again until I knew the truth, and my only shot at that seemed to be hiring a professional. The investigator didn't take long to come up with some results. I was at work when he called me. From his tone of voice, I could tell that it was bad news. He told me that she'd been meeting up with a man named Mark. He worked in an office on the same street as hers. The PI had caught them slipping away 3 times in the week that he'd been following her. She got off work 2 hours before I did, and she'd been using that window to meet up with him in some motel each time. Of course, he had pictures to back everything up. He actually had everything thoroughly documented with detailed timestamps, reports of her movements. But the pictures were the star of the show. They were timestamped too and crystal clear. He had photos of Deborah and her affair partner kissing in the passenger seat of his car. There was also a series of photos of them coming down from his car and heading into the hotel. He noted that was a rookie mistake and said she wasn't being as careful as I thought she was. If she was covering her tracks, they would have gone in separate cars and staggered their arrivals. She was sloppy, and he said she probably deleted her messages because she figured out Daniel had seen them. She must have been confident that I had no idea what was going on. She was gearing up to deny everything. It was reassuring to know that I'd made the right move before she had the chance to really clean up her act. But that wasn't enough to make me feel better about the whole situation. I was devastated and betrayed, but I mostly felt stunned. After making it 13 years together, you think you're going to go the distance. I couldn't wrap my mind around the fact that she decided that meant nothing to her. I spent the next few days planning my next steps. As much as I treasured our time together, I wasn't going to overlook infidelity. It's completely unforgivable as far as I'm concerned. When I was ready, after going through things with a lawyer, I confronted Deborah with the truth. I made sure Daniel slept over at a friend's place that night. I didn't want him home in case things got messy. That turned out to be the right move. I didn't say anything. I just dropped the photos in her lap while she was in bed that evening. As soon as she saw what they were, she pushed them to the side. She didn't say a word. I asked her if she had anything to say for herself, and she shook her head. She said I obviously had something I wanted to say, and that I should go first. I was already annoyed by her attitude, but I went ahead. I really did have a lot to say. I didn't bother asking if she really had an affair. The proof was right in front of us. I just asked who he was and if she loved him. She admitted that their offices were on the same street, and she claimed that nothing happened between them. She said I didn't have the evidence I thought I had because they never actually became intimate. They just spent time with each other. That made me laugh. I pointed out the pictures of the two of them kissing and asked if that was what it looked like to spend time together. It was such a lazy lie that I was actually insulted that she thought I would believe it. The fact that she didn't even seem that apologetic only made things worse. She insisted that it was just friendly, and I joked that they must be really good friends to get a motel together in the middle of the day. She just stared at me expressionless and said I didn't have actual proof that she had been intimate with him. The pictures didn't show that. I felt like I was arguing with a toddler. We both knew what she'd done, but she was trying to hide behind technicalities. She was acting like it was a court of law, like I'd back down just because I didn't have proof and everything would go back to normal. I said I'd seen the messages on her phone and I knew she was lying to me. That changed everything. Suddenly, the glassy stare disappeared and she sat up straight. She snapped and said, "It was Daniel, wasn't it?" She called him a little brat and said she was going to teach him a lesson. I was alarmed by her sudden outburst. I'd also planned a cover for him, and I was surprised she jumped right to blaming him. I hadn't even mentioned his name. She latched onto it as a way to avoid facing her guilt. She completely ignored the fact that attacking Daniel for snooping was as good as admitting that everything was true. I lied and said he didn't know anything about it. He confided in me, and I wasn't about to throw him under the bus. I was going to leave Deborah, but the two of them would still be son and mother for the rest of their lives. I didn't want to damage that relationship for him, but she was ready to destroy it all on her own. Her entire focus shifted to Daniel and how he was a terrible kid and he'd turn on her ever since he became a teenager. It was crazy how she was talking about her own son simply because he had found out that she was being unfaithful to me. By that point, I'd taken my phone out of my pocket and started recording. It was on my hand hanging by my side, so it didn't capture great video of her, but it got enough to prove that she was the person I was talking to. And it captured every single horrible thing she said about my son, including her vague threats to teach him a lesson and make him sorry. Normally, I wouldn't be scared of my wife. She's got an average build for a woman and wouldn't pose much of a physical threat to me. Besides, I've never seen her get violent, but that was before she was unfaithful to me. Now I know she's capable of things I would never have expected of her. I wasn't going to take any chances with Daniel's safety. I didn't bother arguing with her any further. I packed my things and told her I would be leaving. She completely freaked out at me. She said I was just trying to tear us apart and that I'd already succeeded in turning Daniel against her. I just told her that I'd be taking Daniel to stay with my brother until I could be sure she wasn't a danger to him anymore. I ignored all her threats, packed a small bag, and left without another word to her. Even when she threw a vase against the wall, I just made sure to keep recording every moment. I won't lie, I was shaking by the time I got in my car. I'm still uneasy about how everything went down. I honestly didn't expect her to flip out like that, and I'm glad I had the foresight to make sure Daniel was out of the house. He's safely in my brother's house with me, and while she's called to threaten me to bring him back home, she hasn't actually shown up in person. I've been documenting everything, and along with the recording, my lawyer says I have a serious shot at winning custody. Daniel hasn't taken this well. He's convinced that our separation is his fault, even though I reassured him that he did the right thing. I had to let him know about his mother's reaction, though I spared him the exact details. He's not a little kid anymore, and he had to know why I didn't want him to see her. I'm still unsettled by what I discovered that night. The woman I'd loved for more than a third of my life was dangerous and vindictive when cornered. The way she talked about teaching teaching my son a lesson made me sick and killed any shred of empathy I might have had left for her. The divorce and temporary custody filings are underway, and I can only hope the legal system will do its job. Update. It's been a few months since the night I confronted Deborah, and looking back at my marriage feels like looking at someone else's life. It's hard to believe there was a time when Daniel and I had a loving wife and mother in our home instead of the monster she became during the divorce proceedings. She continued threatening to call the police if I didn't bring him home. I responded by sending her the video where she made threats to both me and Daniel and promised to show that to the police. I knew the police wouldn't do anything about it, but it was enough to get her not to do anything foolish. Things escalated when she started texting Daniel. He showed me the messages himself. She'd sent several messages in a row accusing him of destroying our family over what he thought he saw. It got so bad that he asked if I was sure that she was actually being unfaithful. I assured him that the private investigator had done a thorough job and the proof was solid. She was just trying to push the blame onto anyone except herself. I didn't feel good about it, but I blocked her number on his phone. I didn't win the emergency custody hearing. Unfortunately, it didn't make any real difference because I wasn't ordered to return Daniel home. The judge decided that I'd removed him responsibly since I'd informed his mom about where I was taking him. He said he understood my concern and why I had taken him away, but he didn't believe my son was in any real danger from his mother. As long as I didn't take him out of state or move him without his mother's knowledge, he could continue staying with me and my brother. The judgment still made me angry. Deborah had lost her mind that night, and if Daniel had been home, she might have actually hurt him. It felt like the system was bending over backwards to protect her rights as a mother, despite all the evidence proving she was unfit. It gave me serious doubts about winning the permanent custody hearing. I caught a lot of criticism from pretty much everyone I knew for what I did. She'd spun a story to all our friends and her family about how I'd stolen our son. People I was friendly with were suddenly staring at me on the street or treating me like a criminal. I explained myself to the few who would give me a chance, and sometimes they saw my side. A few of them still insisted that she was his mother and she wouldn't have done anything. I find it hard to agree whenever I remember her smashing things inside my house. Somehow the final custody hearing was a lot fairer. This time the judge agreed that there was a serious cause for concern given the recording I made that night. He even called the footage disturbing. He added that he might have written off her outburst as an uncharacteristic emotional reaction if not for the stream of messages she sent to me and Daniel. He said they established a pattern of behavior that made him hesitate to give her custody, especially because those messages came long after the heat of the moment. I was given full custody of Daniel while she was allowed supervised visits. It was a temporary situation with the possibility of her getting joint custody depending on her behavior. I was a little less excited about that, but that's a problem that can be dealt with down the line. I can't even describe how relieved I was to get full custody of him. I'd been in a bad place for a long time, convinced that I was going to lose my son to a woman who now hated him for her own mistakes. I still believe the legal system misplaces its priorities sometimes, but now I think we just got a bad judge during the emergency hearing. Daniel was reluctant to go for the visits, and I had to convince him to give his mom a chance. Honestly, part of me agreed that he might be better off without her, but I feel like he owes it to himself to at least give her a chance. To her credit, she didn't freak out at Daniel when they met. He told me she was quiet and careful. It almost felt like they were two strangers meeting. She told him that she was sorry for how she'd acted and she was working to regain his trust. Daniel told me he didn't fully buy it. In a later visitation, she confessed that she felt lonely and she accepted that she was the one who had torn the family apart. She said she felt lonely without the two of us. She wouldn't forgive herself if she didn't patch things over with him. He didn't give her an answer right away. I told him that he didn't have to accept her apology if he wasn't ready. She'd hurt both of us a lot, and it would take time for her to make things right with him. Maybe she and Daniel will be able to repair their damaged relationship one day. I wouldn't mind that, especially if she actually manages to work on herself. But it's unlikely she'll ever be his primary guardian again. And given how she flipped out at the drop of a hat, I think that works fine for me.